Welcome back. You're now watching the lifestyle segment of the weekend show brought to you by HoloCrunch.
Crunchy, yummy goodness.
Yay! All right, we'll be talking about air travel in Nigeria. Air travel in the country has witnessed increased patronage in recent years due to the rising insecurity across major roads in Nigeria. The sudden spike in the prices of domestic airline tickets from 23,300 naira minimum rate to about 50,000 naira flat rate has left many travelers distraught. Joining us in today's program to discuss this, we have
Ambassador Kayode Adeshola, founder Tourism Plus Nigeria. Good morning, welcome to the weekend show. We also have Captain Emmanuel Grace. He is an aviation and tourism expert and director of studies, TBS Aviation and Tourism Academy. Good morning,
Thank you very
welcome.
much for having me.
You're welcome.
Captain Emmanuel. Let me start with you. What is the main reason for hiking the prices of air tickets?
Okay, so good morning once again, and thanks for having me.
You're welcome.
To answer your question specifically, there are two major reasons behind the increase. And the first one is that Nigeria doesn't produce aviation fuel. And as an airline expert, I understand very much that the cost of aviation fuel, number one, and competition in the market, local market, determines most of the time the price of airline tickets. Now, when your country doesn't produce aviation fuel and you import aviation fuel, unlike other countries like the United States, South Africa, that produces aviation fuel, so you buy aviation fuel at the local parallel market rate for the dollar. So the major reason why we are having this current increase is because aviation fuel currently, and I quote the Airline Operators Association of Nigeria, they brought out that release about 10 days before the decision to increase the fuel. In Lagos, for example, aviation fuel sells for 420 naira a gallon. In Port Harcourt for 22, in Abuja for 25. So this automatically affects the profitability of airlines. Already, you must also know that airlines actually in Africa are not really operating at a maximum profitability, because apart from aviation fuel, other spare parts of an aircraft which needs regular maintenance are also being imported, especially in Nigeria. So if you now couple that with the second reason, which is the current issue of forex unavailability in the country, then you have all the indices for airlines to run their finances aground. So what I think is happening right now is airlines are trying to survive, stay afloat of the market, so that the cost of aviation fuel and the lack of forex availability, which means they have to buy spare part at very expensive prices, does not run their business aground.
You know, just a couple of days ago, when the National Assembly had this conversation, Honorable Adeja mentioned that at least about 30 more licenses were being processed at the moment. We've seen airline numbers grow in the last couple of years. You have mentioned competition also determines prices. Shouldn't this be dropping the prices as opposed to increasing it? And this is to you, Adeshola.
Okay, thank you. According to the Honorable, it was mentioned that about 30 airlines are expecting approval now. Yes, good. We should be expecting reduced fare. But like my colleague has mentioned, Captain Emmanuel, that there are some factors that may hinder the reduction in price, which is the cost of aviation fuel, which is more important, and as well, like the forex exchange. Like before now, the aviation fuel is being purchased at 190 at the exchange rate of 340 official price. But now this airline has to go to the parallel market to source for dollar in order to purchase the aviation fuel and for the maintenance, spare parts for maintenance of the aircraft. So at the parallel market, you source for the dollar at 570. So this already is a loss to some of the airlines. And mind you, before now, many of the airlines, their operational costs, they have been running at high figure. They are not that making that profit as it ought to be. In a situation whereby an aircraft that will carry like 150 passenger is having like 50 passenger, you see what that could mean to the airline.
Sorry to interrupt here, Deshala, but let's explain this for average Nigerians at home. Why do airlines need dollars for this? Why do they need to source for dollars to buy their fuel and the likes? Can we explain that so that they understand? Because our money is Naira. So the average Nigerian is saying, I pay for my ticket in Naira, I earn in Naira. How is that our business? So why do they need to do this?
When you talk of aviation fuel,
yes,
you talk in dollar. Because you buy in dollar because you are a member of the OPEC. So when you are sourcing for aviation fuel, you purchase in dollar. Like what we do here about fuel subsidy. You see that when we want to subsidize the fuel that we consume in Nigeria, you hear the government saying, okay, they are buying from outside to subsidize what the figure we have here. So when you are dealing with the international community, you pay in dollar. You don't pay in your local
And the
currency.
airlines make this payment, not NNPC.
No.
Government.
The airline make this payment. So they need to, so waiting to buy dollar from CBN at time takes time. So in order to avoid that, they need to go to the parallel market to source for this dollar, and by doing that, it affects their profit.
And the people suffer for this.
Yeah, the people suffer for it.
The airline business globally is a very cutthroat one. I believe it was Sir Richard Branson that said, if you want to become a millionaire, first of all become a billionaire, then start an airline business. Yeah. So if it's so globally competitive, what are some international best practices that other governments world over apply so their citizens can still benefit from air travel, Captain?
Thank you very much for that question. Before I answer that question, I'd like to also take a swipe at my colleague's response, especially concerning the question of explaining to the average Nigerian for them to understand better. Yeah. Because most of them look at it also like they pay for their fares in Naira. And then they expect that you should be able to be considerate, because that decision became an inconsiderate decision. But in addition to this explanation my colleague made about Forex and the current rate of the aviation fuel, don't also forget, Nigeria is not an aircraft manufacturing country. So that means most of our aircrafts that we operate, that the airline operates, are either leased from foreigners, from Europe, and so also the spare part needs to be purchased from Europe in dollars. At a point in time, I know Arik Air paid their pilots in dollars. That was before they were taken over by AMCON. So apart from aviation fuel, to maintain an aircraft in Nigeria, you have to buy spare parts from abroad. You don't pay the engineer, the aerospace company abroad, you don't pay them in Naira. You have to buy in dollar, and also you still have to clear this particular spare part with custom duties. That's in addition to what my colleague has said. Now, in response to your question, global best practices, I agree with you, because we have to look at this from both ends. I am an aviation expert, but also a tourism expert. So we can't just look at this issue from the angle of the airlines without looking at it from the angle of the passengers, right? So for domestic tourism, for example, Russia and some European countries, after the pandemic has eased, their domestic tourism has taken, a boost, because they have a competitive system already of pricing. Now, in Europe, to be specific, there are routes you can fly for as low as 15 euros. But then, that comes back to my explanation. Europe is a continent or a region that produces aircraft parts. But here in Nigeria, in Africa, we don't. We purchase. We go to Europe to lease aircrafts. either the plane is making profit, the airline are making profit or not, they have to remit on their leases. They have to pay insurance. They have to buy aviation fuel. They have to buy spare part. According to global best practices, global best practices also means you don't want to buy a spare part from China that you can buy in France because of we're looking at quality. So everything now boils down to cost. And honestly, to be very, very sincere, the competitiveness of new airlines that came in, like Green Africa, like United Nigeria, like Ibom here. Some of you remember when Ibom here came. So when we have new airlines like that, you notice something. When they start with very cheap prices in order to gain market share. But then the reality of the aviation business, like you said, if you want to be a millionaire, first of all, make your billions and start an airline business. So airline operation is very, very expensive. And when you are now doing business in Naira, but all your suppliers demand payment in dollars, your maintenance is to be done in dollars. To now make the whole situation very, very precarious, you now battle with exponential increase. Because what our Nigerians don't know, that there was more than 150% increase in the cost of aviation fuel. Yeah. So what happens when the pump price of fuel, PMS, becomes 400 naira, like we had it maybe 2017, 2018, the average cost of transportation on the street also what? Increases. And let's not forget, aviation is also part of the transportation industry. I think.
So, Ambassador Teshola, aviation experts have also said that prices of flight tickets haven't increased in about 3 years. And with the rising numbers when we talk about inflation, it is only fair for this to happen. How does this also translate into profit and incomes for tourism experts?
Well, what is happening recently is going to have a negative effect on the tourism industry because, for example, most of us that do tour packaging will find it very difficult to have a reasonable price for our clients. Like, for example, as a tourism expert, I want to package a tour to Budu. And now the fare is, you can't get anything less than 50,000 naira. So which simply means that a to and fro fare from here to that destination, the passenger will be spending like 110,000 just on air ticket, and not talking about accommodation. By the time you add accommodation to it and other expenses, you see that the tour package will be on the high side. So, and being on the high side, we have a negative effect on that package because most of the clients will not be able to afford that prices you are giving to them. So the hike in price of aviation price is going to have a negative effect on travel domestically. And like my colleague said, one of the things that we as a tourism expert think will take us out of the mess that the COVID-19 has put us into is promoting domestic tourism, which we have been doing. We have seen youth, we have seen colleagues discovering many destinations in this country. Like, for example, the popular Idere Hill now. If you have heard about Idere Hill, you will see the rate at which tourists troop to this destination, Idere. So now the effect of on this hiking price is on Idere Hill will be devastating because passenger that needs to fly to a destination very close to Idere won't be able to do that just because of the 100% increase in price of air tickets.
Ambassador, I wonder, is there a role for government to play, you know, in subsidizing and cushioning the effects of these hiking airline tickets on the citizens and the average Nigerians, given the fact that they've been unable to secure the lives of Nigerians who want to travel by road and other means of transportation? Is there a role the government needs to play in cushioning this hike?
I think the role the government needs to take is like the Nigeria Civil Aviation Authority. They are the regulatory body that needs to come into action. They need to sit down the airline operators and talk to them. They should engage them to see how they can both look into this situation so that the effect will not be much on the traveler. And for the federal government, I think the government should be considerate to the airline operator. Like we said earlier, that the airline business belongs to the big boys. If you are not big enough, if you have not made your billions, then you don't go into the business, because you will find out that going into the business, you may be spending the money you have made from other business to run the airline business. That is the reason, one of the reasons why you see that some airline came into the scene, and within the shortest period of 3-4 years, they disappear. So government should have a kind of a way to assist the airline by making funds available for them to cushion their running costs. Government should assist the airline like what they did during the 2020, that they gave palliative to the aviation industry. And out of this palliative, we in the travel sector too, we benefited from it. At least, no matter how little the palliative was, it has a positive effect on our businesses. So government should come out and come to the aid of this airline operator. They can lend them money in a long time, so that most of these aircraft that they acquire through leasing system, they will have enough capital to get them at ease, instead of sourcing around getting loan from the bank. You and I know how high bank rate could be, but if government could come to their aid, lend them, give them loan on a long time basis, then the system will be perfect.
So my last question for you, Captain Emmanuel. We are aware that AMCON had taken over the likes of Airfare, air contractors. So when we say that they should talk to themselves, they should sit down, it's more like government should talk to government. But my question is, what's the place of a national carrier in this conversation? If we had the Nigerian Airways or whatever it's going to be called, do you feel this would make it easier and cheaper because they have stake in it?
Wow, thank you for that question, because one of the major reasons why we are here today is because we don't have a national carrier. We cited the examples of Europe and other global best practices. Europe as a region, probably most of the major countries in Europe have their national carriers. And you can see that they have this ownership of the market. And because they're national carriers, they are able to have agreements that helps them to hedge fuel, agreements that help them to lease aircraft for themselves and all of that. If I believe the Buhari administration, I want to give it to them, they made some positive effort at giving us a national carrier. But there are so many complexities around that. I don't want to get into that in this particular edition. But I think the time has come for us to call a spade a spade. We will not see significant improvement in Nigeria's aviation industry until all actors, and I mean all actors, government, stakeholders, airlines. Some of our colleagues have actually even said that, can we have a time that all the airlines, domestic airlines, come together, collaborate, and fly under a single national carrier? That's also an option. Because until we have our own national carrier, either government established or private sector involved, we will not be able to come out of this cycle of purchasing aviation fuel in dollars, buying spare part in dollars. There are sometimes, I'm aware of my colleagues in the airline industry, they fly planes sometimes for maintenance in Europe, empty. And why is that happening? Because without a national carrier, we're not going to be able to have, Nigeria is a market that has, aviation industry in Nigeria, we have so many trained personnel. in aircraft maintenance, in aircraft piloting, but we don't have the planes. We don't have the market because we don't have a national carrier. If we have a national carrier, for example, we wouldn't need to be going out to lease aircrafts. We wouldn't need to buy spare parts from abroad because there's going to be a maintenance hub. And I think the current government should, before the end of this administration, do something very, very tangible on the issue of national carrier, because without it, we will continue to go round in circles.
That's a fine place to leave it in today's program. Captain Ambassador, thank you so much for your time. We'll continue the conversation with you at a different time and a different date, and hopefully this issue would be, somewhat resolved and cushioned so the ordinary, Nigerian can, fly again in Nigeria.
Sure.
All right, we'll take a short break right now. When we return, more on the Weekend Show. Don't go anywhere.